In a high-profile court case, all eyes are on a flashy, arrogant lawyer who's expected to win until his quiet, overlooked secretary starts connecting dots no one else could see. She uncovers a hidden trail of evidence, manipulations inside the legal system, and one move that could destroy the opposing team, but no one believes her until it's almost too late. She's not just typing memos, she's writing history. Rain tapped against the tall windows of the law firm's 17th floor like a ticking clock counting down something unseen. Elena sat at her desk, posture perfect, eyes sharp behind her glasses. She was the kind of woman people passed without noticing, efficient, quiet, polite. The kind that blended into the background of boardrooms and break rooms. The kind that powerful men underestimated. Across the room, attorney Richard Kane, known for his courtroom flair and backroom deals, barked orders on the phone, one hand gesturing wildly. The office buzzed with energy. Tomorrow was the final hearing in one of the biggest corporate fraud cases in the city's history. Kane was defending Lexartech, a billion-dollar tech empire accused of burying safety reports that led to hundreds of faulty medical devices hitting the market. The case had the city on edge. Protesters outside. News trucks parked for days. Lives destroyed by the device failures. And yet, Kane seemed relaxed, because he had a plan. Or so he thought. Elena knew better. She had been working late every night, filing documents, organizing exhibits, and quietly copying files onto her personal drive. Not to leak, not yet. But because something didn't add up. One file, just one, had gone missing from the system 3 nights ago. A single email thread between a Lexartech engineer and the head of R&D, dated 6 months before the devices were released. It referenced anomaly rates that were far higher than what the company had disclosed. She had read it once. Then it was gone. No deletion record. No audit trail. Just vanished. Elena wasn't supposed to have access to those folders. She shouldn't have even seen that message. But now it haunted her. That night, while Kane reviewed his opening statement, Elena approached him. "Sir," she said, voice calm, "I noticed something odd in the file system. A document." "Not now, Elena," he cut her off. "We're too close to trial. I need you focused." She hesitated. "But it's missing." He turned, impatient. "Then it's gone. Do your job and let me do mine." And that was it. Dismissed. She nodded, stepped back, but didn't forget. By 2 a.m., Kane was gone. The office lights were dimmed. Security had done their final rounds. Elena stayed. Not for paperwork. For justice. She logged into the backup system. Not the legal archive, but the deep mirror drives used only for IT restoration. Most didn't even know they existed. But Elena had spent years in the shadows, learning everything. And there it was. The email thread. Hidden in an unlabeled directory under client notes archive /reorg_archive_5. She opened it. It was worse than she remembered. The engineer had begged the company to delay launch, reporting multiple units failing in early human trials. The reply from R&D was brutal. Delay not an option. Silence the concern. Elena stared at the screen, breath slowing. If this got out, Lexartech's defense would collapse. Not only that, it could lead to criminal charges. People could go to prison. And Kane, he must have known. He had too much access not to. She printed it. Then she backed it up to a secure drive, encrypted it, and slipped the USB into her coat pocket. The next morning, the courthouse was chaos. Protesters screamed. Reporters shoved microphones. Elena walked behind Kane, quiet, steady, holding the exhibit boxes. Her hands looked calm. Her heart was on fire. Inside the courtroom, the prosecution looked worn. They had strong circumstantial evidence, but nothing to pierce the corporate veil. The judge, old school, strict, sharp, had made it clear. No games, no delays. Kane rose to speak. He started strong, confident, slick. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "what we have here is not fraud. It's a witch hunt. A tragedy, yes. But Lexartech followed protocol, disclosed everything, and stands by its integrity." Elena watched from the assistant's bench. She reached into her coat, fingers brushing the USB. She could stand up right now, submitted herself. But that wasn't how the game worked. Not yet. She waited. Then everything shifted. As the prosecution cross-examined Kane's lead witness, Lexarteca's VP of Engineering, something cracked. A slip of the tongue. The witness said, "We discussed the anomalies internally, but then froze." The room went silent. The prosecution pounced. "What anomalies?" Kane stood up instantly. "Objection." But the judge raised his hand. "Let him answer." The witness tried to backtrack. "Just minor variations, nothing abnormal." Elena leaned forward. She pulled the printed email from her folder. She handed it, without a word, to the lead prosecutor's assistant. He looked confused. She whispered, "It's real. It's from their server. They buried it." He looked at the page, then at her, then ran. Within minutes, the judge was handed the document. Kane looked like he'd seen a ghost. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Kane, would you care to explain this email? It appears to contradict your client's entire defense." Kane opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The courtroom stirred. Gasps. Murmurs. Flashbulbs popping. Elena sat quietly, her hands folded. The prosecution requested a recess to verify the document. The judge granted it. "But if this is what it appears to be, gentlemen, this trial just changed course." Kane turned to Elena in the hallway, his voice low, furious. "You did this." She looked him in the eye for the first time in 5 years. "No, sir," she said softly. "You did." He stepped toward her. "You think this makes you a hero? You just destroyed your career." Elena smiled, not bitter, not angry. "Just ready." "I was never here to build a career," she said. "I was here to stop people like you from thinking they could get away with murder." And with that, she turned and walked away, the weight of the truth finally off her shoulders, but the storm far from over. Because this was only the beginning. The courtroom atmosphere had shifted. What was once a confident parade by Kane and Lexartec had turned into silent tension. Reporters outside weren't just chasing scandal anymore. They were chasing blood. Elena walked through the corridor with purpose. She wasn't hiding now. For years, she'd been invisible in those marble hallways, clutching files and delivering coffee to men who called her kiddo. Today, people looked at her differently. But admiration was dangerous. Visibility was dangerous. And she knew that exposing one lie meant uncovering many more. By evening, the court was adjourned. Kane hadn't returned after the recess. Rumors were already spreading. Some said he'd collapsed in the bathroom. Others whispered he'd left the courthouse entirely. Elena didn't care. She went back to the firm's office alone. It was dark, empty, eerily still. The building always felt cold after hours, but tonight it felt hostile. She headed straight to the server room. Her goal wasn't vengeance. It was insurance. If Kane or Lexartec tried to spin things, make it look like the email was fake, she needed a full chain of proof. As she logged in, the screen flickered. The system had been accessed. Not by her. Someone had already started deleting files. Fast. She opened the access log. The signature was familiar. RC Internal. Kane's device. He was trying to clean house. But he hadn't counted on her learning the system as deeply as he had. She traced the deletion path, mirrored it, and restored every file in real time. Her fingers moved like lightning. The only sound was the low hum of the server fans. Then came the click of heels. She froze. A woman's voice echoed from behind her. "I didn't expect the secretary to have bite." Elena turned. It was Marissa Hale, Lexarteca's legal strategist. Sharp suit. Sharper mind. She'd barely appeared in court, always working from behind the curtain. Many believed she ran the actual defense while Kane was just the face. "I suppose I should be impressed," Marissa said, folding her arms. "You found the email. Clever." Elena didn't answer. "I've spent 10 years building Lexarteca's legal wall," Marissa continued. "And you just put a crack in it." Elena's eyes narrowed. "You knowingly defended a lie." Marissa stepped closer. "We defended an empire. That's what law firms do. Do you really think truth wins cases? You've been in this building too long not to know better. Elena didn't flinch. The truth doesn't always win, but it outlasts lies. Marissa's smirk faded. You made a mistake going public. Do you know what happens to people who cross companies like ours? They disappear. Quietly. Legally. I backed everything up, Elena said. Off-site. Multiple locations. If anything happens to me, the rest goes straight to the press. Marissa stared at her, unreadable, then smiled. You're smarter than I thought. She turned, heels echoing, then paused. But make no mistake, she said softly without turning around. You've just started a war. And then she was gone. Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Back at her small apartment, Elena sat on the floor with her laptop and flash drives laid out like puzzle pieces. She wasn't done. Not even close. She reopened the restored documents. Buried deep in a compressed folder was another email thread, this one encrypted. She cracked it and froze. It wasn't about the devices. It was about witness manipulation. A man named Jared Tolland, a former LexerTech engineer, had agreed to testify for the prosecution 6 months ago, but suddenly disappeared. The prosecution had mentioned him briefly, then dropped it, citing unreliable communication. The emails revealed the truth. Tolland had been paid off, not with money, with silence. His daughter had been in a custody battle. A LexerTech subsidiary had funded her ex-husband's legal team. Suddenly, Jared vanished from the witness list.
It was more than fraud now.
It was coercion, abuse of power. Elena stared at the screen. If she could find Jared, she could blow the case wide open. She made calls all night, reached out to old friends in civil court offices, ran background traces, even searched nursing records. Tolland's daughter had a rare condition, which meant expensive, traceable treatments. At 4:13 a.m., she found a lead. A prescription filled in the name of Tolland's daughter, 2 towns over. She grabbed her coat and left. The address was a worn-out motel on the edge of town. She knocked on room 206, hands trembling slightly. The door opened slowly. A tired man with sunken eyes looked out. He blinked. Who? Jared Tolland? She asked. He hesitated, then nodded. I'm not a lawyer, she said quickly, but I found what they did. You don't have to hide anymore. His shoulders sagged, years of fear pooling in a single breath. They said they'd take her, that they'd ruin my name. I didn't know who to trust. You don't have to trust me, she said. Just tell the truth. On record. I'll protect the rest. By noon the next day, the judge was handed an affidavit, signed, notarized, and backed by 3 sets of digital evidence. Kane didn't show up to court. Neither did Marissa. LexerTech's top brass sat stiff and silent while the prosecution laid out new charges: obstruction, witness intimidation, conspiracy. The judge's gavel came down like a thunderclap. The court finds sufficient grounds for immediate indictment proceedings. Trial is hereby postponed, and new criminal charges will be added to the docket. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Cameras swiveled toward Elena, now standing beside the prosecution, not behind anyone.
She didn't speak.
She didn't need to. That night, her inbox was flooded with messages. Victims, whistleblowers, investigators, secretaries from other firms. One stood out. Subject: I've seen what you've done. I need help. It was from a paralegal in another major firm. Elena opened it, and she realized something deep in her bones. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of something much bigger. And she was ready. 3 weeks later, Elena stood in front of the courthouse again, but this time, she wasn't in the shadows. The LexerTech scandal had exploded. Headlines called it one of the largest legal takedowns in corporate history. Whistleblowers had come forward. Hidden labs were exposed. Government regulators launched independent investigations. Kane's law license was suspended. Marissa Hale had vanished. No one knew whether she was hiding or planning her next move. But Elena? She was everywhere. Her inbox never slept. Journalists, former employees, legal clerks, even junior lawyers, all reaching out with files, tips, encrypted recordings. Some wanted justice. Others just wanted to unburden themselves. She never asked why. She just listened. And when something mattered, truly mattered, she acted. She didn't work at the firm anymore. She didn't belong behind someone else's desk. Instead, she worked from her tiny apartment, walls now covered in court calendars, photos, case diagrams, and sticky notes arranged like battle plans. A war room. One evening, as she sifted through a batch of anonymous leaks, one file made her pause. It was a deposition, buried in old archives from a real estate fraud case. Seemed unrelated, but the name caught her eye. Marissa Hale. Not listed as an attorney, as a witness. It dated back 7 years. Elena opened it. A woman had testified that she'd been instructed by Marissa to forge compliance documents during a property transfer involving government subsidies. The case had disappeared without explanation, settled privately, sealed. But the transcript hadn't been destroyed. It had simply been misfiled. And now, it had found its way to Elena. She read every word. It wasn't just fraud. It was the blueprint of how Marissa had risen, one fake file at a time. Elena leaned back in her chair, heart racing. This wasn't over. It was just deeper than anyone realized. She called Jared Tolland. "I need a name," she said. He didn't ask why. "She had a fixer," he said. "Goes by Cole Mathers. Private, off the books. If Marissa needed someone buried, files altered, or records erased, he did it." "How do I find him?" "You don't," Jared replied. "Unless you know where he drinks." Elena did her homework. Tracked 3 aliases. Checked local credit charges. Found a dive bar 3 blocks from the industrial district. A place where forgotten men disappear into liquor and shadows. She went that night. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and regret. A few eyes glanced her way, but most went back to their drinks. She spotted him. Mid-40s. Leather jacket. Scar over his right eyebrow. The kind of man who never smiled without a reason and never gave one. She sat across from him. "You're Cole." He looked up slow. "And you're a long way from courtrooms, secretary." "Not a secretary anymore." "No," he said, taking a drink. "You're the woman who pulled Kane's spine out in front of the whole city."
She leaned in.
"And I'm not done." He laughed, low and bitter. "You came here for what? A confession?"
"No," she said. "A choice."
That got his attention. "You know where Marissa is. You know what she's hiding. And if she goes down, everything she's touched goes with her. Including you." He stared at her, silent. She continued. "I'm offering you a way out. Talk now, on record. Help me stop what she's building, because she's not running. She's preparing." His eyes narrowed. "You think she's starting something? I think she already has." There was a long pause. Then he said, "She has a vault. Physical, not digital. She doesn't trust servers anymore." "Where?"
"Offshore."
"But she keeps a duplicate here. Safety deposit box, under a false name. And if she thinks you're getting close, she'll burn it all. Then we don't give her time to burn." The next 48 hours were chaos. Elena filed an emergency injunction through a contact in federal court, citing obstruction of justice and unlawful data concealment. She couldn't prove everything yet, but she had just enough to get the judge's attention. By the time Marissa's lawyers responded, it was too late. The court ordered the bank to open the box. Inside, USBs, paper trails, bank records, off-the-books payments, names,
Dozens of them.
lawyers, executives, politicians, all tangled in a decade-long web of manipulation and cover-ups. And at the center of every thread, Marissa Hale. The news broke that night. Elena didn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, phone vibrating nonstop, news anchors saying her name on live TV, hashtags exploding online. But none of it mattered more than the quiet knock on her door the next morning. She opened it. Marissa stood there. No security, no theatrics. Just her, pale, sleepless, but still composed. "I didn't expect you to make it this far," she said. "You never expected me to exist. Marissa looked around the small apartment. You built all this from nothing. No, Elena said. I built it from everything you threw away. There was silence between them. Heavy. Final. Marissa pulled a folded paper from her coat and held it out. A full confession. Names, accounts, directives. In exchange for one thing. Elena didn't take it. What do you want? A chance, Marissa said quietly, to disappear. No court. No trial. Just gone. Elena thought about the victims, the families, the silence she'd carried for too long. Then she took the paper and said, You'll get your chance, but not the one you think. That afternoon, she handed everything over to federal investigators. Marissa didn't get to disappear. She got arrested. In full view of the courthouse she once manipulated from the shadows.
And Elena?
She walked past the reporters without a word. Justice didn't need to shout. In the weeks that followed, Elena launched a new initiative, a legal support network for whistleblowers. Secretaries, assistants, paralegals, the ones always ignored. She called it Second Chair, because not every hero wears robes. Not every warrior stands at the podium. Some fight from the corners, quietly turning tides. And when systems fail, sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the one who saves everything. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Elena proved that power doesn't always come from titles, suits, or status. It comes from courage, conviction, and the willingness to stand for what's right, even when you're alone. In a world where the truth is often buried by the powerful, sometimes it's the overlooked, the underestimated, the ones in the background, who hold the key to justice. Because real strength isn't loud, it's relentless.